Hello and happy Metta Monday. This is a short video created to support you in healing and growing into your most authentic self. And today I'm focused on suffering. Maybe that's why I'm wearing black. I just was drawn to this sweater and this color today. Suffering is an uncomfortable word. It's an uncomfortable experience. And, I usually come on these videos with a lot of answers, and I really instead want to bring in a question, which is only answerable by you. And that is, what is your relationship to suffering? Because that's the thing that matters more than anything I or any teacher or, anybody out there has to say. What matters the most is your experience of suffering. And from my own personal experience, and from my work with clients and the reading that I've done and, psychology and, Buddhism and the neurobiology, everybody has a different way of dealing with suffering, but there are patterns. And I've drawn from every item on this menu I'm going to give you. With suffering, we can tend to push it away. The first of the Four Noble Truths is just the simple fact that there is suffering. And the second Noble Truth is that we suffer because of attachment. And so this could be, something we were really clinging on to and we lost it. And so there's suffering because of that. But another form of attachment is aversion. So when we push away our suffering, it doesn't go very far. Pushing away our suffering is, one of the sort of tendencies that most of us have. Another is, this like stuffing down. And so you feel it and you don't allow it. And instead there's this, energy that hasn't been expressed that gets stuck in the body. In my book, I write about this as like a great metaphor, kind of gross metaphor, is like if you had garbage tucked into all the corners of your house. So you can't see it when you walk in, but if it's in the couch cushions, it's behind the furniture, it's everywhere. You can feel, you can sense it, you can maybe smell it. And like our bodies are an example of the way that we stuff our garbage. And so this is another way that we can, deal with or not deal with suffering. So again, pushing away, stuffing down. Another way that we can tend to deal with suffering is if it's uncomfortable in the body, we kick it up to the level of the mind, and then it bounces around the mind like a pinball. I call this the pinball machine effect. A concept in Buddhism that is, relates to this is we're firing the second arrow of suffering. So if we experience something that makes us suffer, and then we start to think about it and just like obsess over it and let this pinball bounce around, that's firing that second arrow. This is the optional arrow. It may not feel optional. You may be caught in a pattern that feels like you don't have control over it. But if you can witness it, then you can begin to shift it. So some ways of tending to suffering are, first of all, just like a mindset of, being emotionally efficient. I think I've used that phrase before. It's in my book. Being emotionally efficient allows you and me and all of us to say, okay, if I'm going to suffer, I want to do this as healthily as possible. So if you agree that emotions are energy, then are in the body, that energy is in the body, then moving the body can really help. The process of yoga, of connecting the attention and the energy to the body through motion, and the mind is harnessed in using that attention directed towards that energy of the body. You can move through, you can process whatever is bothering you, or working its way at you in the mind. Get connected to the body, move your body with a focused way, Yoga is all about quality of action, so you could even move the body in non-yoga poses. But if you're moving with the intention of moving energy through and accepting and releasing something, then it doesn't have to be a yoga pose. It could be dancing. It could be running. Again, with that focused intention. And I mentioned this just now. The word allow. I've talked a lot about compassion. If we bring that compassionate container to whatever is working away at us, then there's this process of accepting and allowing our discomfort to just be here. And when we do that, when we do the opposite of our human tendency to push away or run from or stuff down, when we just turn and be with it and bring in compassion, sometimes that's all we need to shift, away from the suffering being ever present in our system. If it is a bigger impetus, a bigger cause of suffering that isn't just going to go away immediately, but needs to be processed slowly. For example, myself, I went through a divorce and it was a very painful loss, and there was no way I was going to process that immediately. And one thing that really helped me, this is 5 years ago, one thing that really helped me was writing I accept lists. So I would just write down all of the things that I was allowing myself to accept instead of resisting, instead of, fighting the truth of my situation. And acceptance is a process too. It doesn't happen overnight, but just knowing that that was a step towards releasing the source of my suffering, it was a huge help. So again, ways to move through suffering: move the body with a focused intention of moving energy through. Sit and hold compassion for yourself, a spacious container that allows your suffering to be here and your witness. Or if it feels relevant, sit and write an I accept list. But I think, the attitude of turning towards our suffering feels very counterintuitive. But if you adapt to this mindset of emotional efficiency, you'll see that all our discomfort often needs is just space to exist, freedom and permission to be here. Suffering is part of the human experience, and so we're not going to get away from it. But if we allow it, we might see and feel the opening that it gives us. We get access to our resources because of suffering. We get empathy, the ability to understand and share somebody else's experience because we've experienced something similar. Suffering opens the heart. Suffering opens our path to what's next in our lives. Suffering, when things get too uncomfortable, that's how we grow. It's just a truth of our experience because it moves us along the path of life and growing towards our most authentic self. So that's about all I have to say. I hope you have a beautiful and skillful day. May it be emotionally efficient, and I'll see you next week.